The crisp, official letter sat on my kitchen counter, its sharp edges a stark contrast to the comfortable chaos of my home. Notice of violation and intent to sue. The header screamed in bold, aggressive caps, making my morning coffee suddenly taste bitter. It was from the Lakeview Estates Homeowners Association. Of course, those bastards. Just yesterday, Mrs. Henderson from number 14 had glared at me as I dragged the heavy, custom-built agility course ramp back into the garage, her perfectly coiffed hair bristling with disapproval. Mr. Davies from number 8, the HOA president himself, had been even worse, pulling over in his pristine SUV to make a theatrical show of jotting notes on a clipboard, his eyes narrowed as if I were smuggling contraband, not just moving a piece of specialized equipment. Their complaints, I knew, centered around excessive noise between 6 a.m. and 8 a.m., unsightly equipment cluttering the driveway, and the ever-vague, yet infinitely irritating, disrupting the peace and quiet enjoyment of the community. They claimed the rhythmic thudding, the occasional sharp barks, and what they perceived as my unconventional activities were making life unbearable for their precious residents. They had no idea my disruption was a symphony of dedication, a relentless pursuit of perfection that demanded early mornings and unwavering focus. Every sunrise, as the dew still clung to the manicured lawns of Lakeview Estates, I was out there, not for leisure, but for purpose. The thudding they heard wasn't random. It was the impact of perfectly executed jumps, the rhythmic pounding of paws against specialized mats, each beat a testament to power, precision, and relentless practice. The barks weren't nuisance noise, they were commands, signals, and the occasional excited yelp of a champion in the making. And the unsightly equipment, that was my arena, my laboratory, my proving ground. Custom hurdles, weave poles, and a state-of-the-art contact ramp, all designed to push boundaries and sculpt a raw talent into something truly extraordinary. My entire life revolved around this. My meager savings had been poured into top-tier nutrition, specialized training gear, and an ungodly amount of time, patience, and unwavering belief. For years, I dreamed of this, of finding the one, the talent so profound it could redefine its field, and I'd found her. She was a blur of focused energy, a symphony of muscle and instinct, her eyes shining with an intelligence that defied explanation. Every morning, as I put her through her paces, I saw not just an animal, but a burgeoning legend. We were on the cusp of something monumental, preparing for the most prestigious championship in the world, an event that could change everything for both of us. The early mornings, the meticulous routine, the subtle adjustments to her diet, the hours spent analyzing every twitch and turn, it was all part of a grand design. So, when the letter described my passion as a persistent nuisance that devalues property and infringes upon the rights of fellow residents, a hot wave of indignation washed over me. They spoke of peace, but their actions were a war. They demanded quiet, but they threatened to silence a dream. This wasn't just about a dog. It was about ambition, sacrifice, and the relentless pursuit of excellence. The final paragraph of the letter solidified their stance, leaving no room for doubt. Failure to cease all disruptive activities immediately will result in the commencement of legal proceedings against you, seeking injunctive relief, monetary damages, and all associated legal costs. It was an unambiguous declaration of war, and I knew, with a fierce certainty, that I wasn't backing down. The disruption that so vexed the Lakeview Estates HOA had a name, and that name was Zephyr. She wasn't a person, but a border collie, a sleek, black and white dynamo whose intelligence was both a marvel and, evidently, a neighborhood nuisance. Zephyr wasn't just smart. She possessed an almost supernatural athleticism, a blend of explosive speed, incredible agility, and an uncanny ability to anticipate my every command, often before I even uttered it. Her leaps were poetry in motion, her turns knife-sharp, her focus unwavering. She could clear hurdles higher than her own head, weave through poles in a blur, and navigate complex courses with a fluidity that left even seasoned trainers awestruck. When she moved, it wasn't just a dog running. It was a force of nature, harnessed and directed by unseen current, a silent conversation between us that transcended words. This wasn't just my pet. She was my life's work, my passion made manifest. My journey to becoming a full-time canine athlete trainer wasn't conventional. I was Alex, and for years, I'd been stuck in a monotonous corporate job, staring at spreadsheets, feeling a growing emptiness despite the steady paycheck. My true joy had always been dogs, specifically dog agility. From a young age, I was fascinated by the intricate dance between handler and dog, the blend of athleticism, trust, and communication. My first agility dog, a scruffy terrier mix named Bolt, taught me patience and the profound rewards of partnership, though he was more heart than raw talent. After Bolt passed, a deep void settled in. It was then, browse online rescue sites almost aimlessly, that I stumbled upon Zephyr's picture. Her eyes, even in the blurry photo, held an intensity, a spark that ignited something within me. The moment I met her, it was clear. She wasn't just another dog. She was a once-in-a-lifetime talent, brimming with untapped potential, almost vibrating with energy. I knew, with absolute certainty, that this was what I was meant to do. I quit my corporate job, much to the alarm of my family and friends, and poured every ounce of my being into Zephyr's training. Our training methods were, admittedly, a bit out of the ordinary for a suburban neighborhood. We couldn't afford dedicated indoor facilities, so my backyard and driveway became our world-class arena. This meant early morning drills to beat the heat and minimize distractions. Those excessive noises the HOA complained about were Zephyr's focused barks and my sharp, concise commands, echoing in the pre-dawn quiet. We used precision footwork drills involving intricate ladder setups that involved rhythmic tapping, which Mr. Davies probably mistook for some bizarre construction project. My unsightly equipment wasn't just agility obstacles, it included a custom-built, low-frequency vibration plate designed to strengthen Zephyr's core muscles without high impact, a device that emitted a low hum the HOA somehow detected. We practiced distance work where I'd stand at one end of the driveway, issuing commands while Zephyr navigated a complex course at the other, involving me shouting instructions that carried across the perfectly manicured lawns. They were also the scent discrimination exercises that involved hiding specific items and Zephyr's enthusiastic snuffling and digging, all conducted with utmost care, of course, but probably looked like random excavation to a casual observer. Each unique method was meticulously chosen, fine-tuned for a fraction of a second's gain in speed, a millimeter's improvement in precision, because at the championship level, every fraction mattered. Our bond deepened with every leap, every weave, every shared moment of triumph or frustration. Zephyr wasn't just following commands, she was anticipating, predicting, reading my subtle cues with an almost telepathic understanding. A slight shift of my shoulder, a flicker in my eyes, and she knew exactly where to go, what to do. Our trust was absolute. When she faltered, I was there to encourage. When she soared, I celebrated with unbridled joy. She was my shadow, my partner, the furry embodiment of my wildest dreams. I sacrificed sleep, social life, and financial stability, all for her potential, and she gave me back a purpose I'd never known. This wasn't just training, it was a dance, a partnership, a relentless pursuit of a shared goal that transcended the confines of my suburban lot. Just as our preparations for the National Agility Championship reached a fever pitch, the HOA delivered their next blow. Not another letter, but a formal cease and desist order, hand-delivered by a smug Mr. Davies himself, flanked by two other board members. This wasn't just a threat anymore, it was a legally binding document, stating that if all disruptive activities were not stopped within 72 hours, they would not only proceed with the lawsuit, but also initiate fines of $500 per day for every day of noncompliance, backdated to the initial notice. The accompanying laminated flyer, distributed door to door, loudly proclaimed their intent to restore peace and property values to Lakeview Estates, subtly painting me as the villain. This wasn't just a hurdle, it was a wall designed to crush my dream under the weight of bureaucracy and financial pressure. The championship was only weeks away, and now, my ability to train Zephyr, our last crucial window for preparation, was under direct attack. The HOA's cease and desist order wasn't just a piece of paper, it was a gauntlet thrown within days. The initial $500 daily fines began accumulating, each one a fresh sting, a blatant attempt to bleed me dry and force surrender. Mr. Davies, fueled by what seemed like a personal vendetta, wasn't content with merely issuing threats. He initiated a series of impromptu community information sessions, thinly veiled smear campaigns held in the HOA clubhouse. During these meetings, he'd project blown-up photos of my driveway, showcasing Zephyr mid-jump or my unsightly equipment, painting a picture of chaos and declining property values. He even had a sound recording, heavily amplified, of Zephyr's barks and the thud of her landings, presenting it as undeniable evidence of my noise pollution. The community was openly divided. Some residents, mostly those living furthest from my house, sided with Davies, nodding gravely at his pronouncements, but others, particularly younger families or those who'd perhaps seen Zephyr in action, looked uncomfortable, their murmurs of dissent barely audible over Davies's booming voice. The pressure mounted with every passing day, but it only sharpened my resolve. The more they pushed, the harder I trained Zephyr. Our morning sessions, now conducted under the looming threat of even higher fines and a potential court injunction, became a desperate race against time. We moved our noisy drills to the very edge of my property, hoping the dense landscaping would muffle the sounds, but it was a futile effort. The training itself became brutally intense. We were focusing on blind crosses, a highly technical maneuver where I had to send Zephyr over an obstacle without visual cues, relying solely on my body language and verbal commands. This required pinpoint accuracy and absolute trust. One wrong move, one misread signal, and she could lose precious seconds or even miss an obstacle entirely. The stress was palpable, affecting even Zephyr. There were days she'd hesitate, her normally eager eyes clouded with a flicker of confusion or fatigue. A particularly complex sequence of weaves, a rapid succession of 12 pulls, became a recurring nightmare. She'd nail the first few, then get tangled, her frustration mirroring mine. We spent hours, sometimes late into the night, replaying those segments, breaking them down, building her confidence back up. It was agonizing, watching her struggle, knowing that every single second mattered for the championship. Just when I felt like I was battling the entire neighborhood alone, unexpected support emerged. Mrs. Gable, an elderly woman living across the street, a quiet observer of our early morning rituals, approached me one afternoon. She'd always seemed stern, a classic HOA type, but her voice was surprisingly gentle. "Alex," she began, "I've seen what you do out there. It's not noise, it's dedication. My grandson, he watches you from his window, says Zephyr's like a superhero." She pressed a small, crumpled envelope into my hand. Inside was a check for a modest sum. "For your fines," she whispered, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Don't tell Davies." It was a small gesture, but it felt like a lifeline. Then there was Mark, a fellow agility enthusiast I'd met at a local trial years ago. Hearing about my plight through the grapevine, he offered his empty warehouse space on the outskirts of town for our final, critical training sessions. "No HOA there, mate," he chuckled. "Just dust and echoes. Train as loud as you like." His offer was a godsend, a sanctuary from the relentless scrutiny. However, the HOA wasn't done. The fines escalated to $1,000 a day, accompanied by a formal summons to a mandatory mediation session, hinting at a full-blown lawsuit if we couldn't reach an agreement. At the same time, the National Championship Committee released the final schedule. The initial qualifying rounds were set to begin in just 2 weeks, but a new rule had been implemented. All competitors were now required to submit a certified veterinary health report no more than 48 hours before the event, attesting to the animal's peak physical condition and, crucially, confirming no signs of stress-induced injury or exhaustion. It was a standard safety measure, but for us, it felt like another targeted attack. Zephyr, under the immense pressure of the intensified training and the constant threat of disruption, had developed a barely perceptible limp after one particularly grueling session. It was minor, just a stiffness in her right shoulder, but a vet report confirming it could disqualify her entirely. The HOA's relentless pressure had taken its toll, risking not just my finances, but Zephyr's health, and with it, our championship dream. The weight of the world, and Lakeview Estates, pressed down on us. The air in the cavernous exhibition hall crackled with anticipation, a stark contrast to the sterile, tense atmosphere of the community center's small mediation room. It was the day of reckoning, a dual battle for my future and Zephyr's destiny. The National Agility Championship was underway, and simultaneously, the HOA's mediation session loomed, a legal guillotine poised over my head. My heart was a drum solo of anxiety, pulled in 2 agonizing directions. I'd managed to secure a last-minute, sympathetic vet who, after extensive therapy and a regimen of anti-inflammatory supplements, had given Zephyr a clean bill of health, but the close call had only amplified the pressure. Zephyr's first run was scheduled for 9 a.m., and the mediation for 10:30 a.m. There was no way to be fully present at both. I'd entrusted Zephyr's warm-up and initial handling to Mark, who stood by her side, a reassuring presence, while I prepared for the HOA's onslaught. The championship arena was a kaleidoscope of vibrant obstacles, flashing lights, and the roar of the crowd, each bark and cheer echoing the high stakes. Zephyr, a picture of coiled power, exploded from the start line on her first qualifying run, a blur of black and white against the green turf. She was magnificent, hitting every contact, clearing every jump with effortless grace, her focus absolute. The crowd gasped at her speed, then erupted in applause as she finished, a near-perfect run that put her at the top of the leaderboard. A text from Mark flashed on my phone. She nailed it. Top of the board. A brief surge of elation, quickly extinguished by the cold dread of the impending mediation. I arrived at the community center, my suit feeling like a straitjacket, just as Mr. Davies was beginning his opening statement. He stood before the mediator, a stern, impartial woman, holding aloft printouts of my HOA violations, his voice dripping with righteous indignation. This individual, he boomed, gesturing vaguely in my direction, has single-handedly disrupted the peace and quiet enjoyment of Lakeview Estates for months. The incessant noise, the unsightly equipment, the blatant disregard for community rules. It's an affront to every homeowner who values their investment and their tranquility. He presented his heavily amplified sound recording, the distorted barks and thuds filling the small room, making me wince. He cited the accumulating fines, the numerous complaints, painting me a rogue element, a selfish individual destroying the fabric of their idyllic community. I felt a surge of anger, wanting to shout about Zephyr's brilliance, about the World Championship, but I held my tongue, knowing this was a different kind of battle, one fought with words and legal precedent, not leaps and weaves. My phone buzzed again, a video from Mark. Zephyr was on her second run, a more complex course. I watched, a knot forming in my stomach, as she cleared a triple jump, then hesitated for a split second at the weave pulls, a flicker of the old stiffness in her shoulder. She recovered, powering through, but it was enough to shave precious milliseconds. My anxiety spiked. When it was my turn, I took a deep breath. My name is Alex, and I am a professional canine athlete trainer. I began, trying to project calm. The disruptions Mr. Davies refers to are the sounds of dedication, the pursuit of excellence. My dog, Zephyr, is not merely a pet. She is an elite athlete, currently competing at the National Agility Championship, aiming for the world title. I explained the rigorous training, the sacrifices, the dream. Mrs. Gable, surprisingly, spoke up, her voice clear and firm. I live directly across from Alex, she stated, looking directly at Mr. Davies. And while there are sounds, they are the sounds of hard work. My grandson looks up to that dog. This isn't about peace, it's about control. Her words were a small victory, a crack in Davies' monolithic facade. But he quickly retorted, dedication does not excuse blatant disregard for community rules. This is a residential neighborhood, not a training facility. The mediator listened impassively, taking notes. Meanwhile, my phone was a constant source of updates from Mark. Zephyr had completed her second run, still in contention, but the pressure was immense. The final championship round was approaching, and I was still trapped in the mediation. I pleaded with the mediator, explaining the critical timing, the culmination of years of work. She granted me a short recess, a mere 30 minutes. I raced out, calling Mark. How is she? What's the course like? He described the final, most challenging course, a true test of speed, agility, and handler-dog synergy. I gave him last-minute instructions. My voice strained. Tell her we've got this. One more time, I could almost feel Zephyr's focused energy, thousands of miles away. Back in the mediation room, the final arguments were made. Mr. Davies demanded a permanent injunction and all accumulated fines. I argued for understanding, for the right to pursue a legitimate, albeit unconventional, profession. The mediator, after a long silence, announced her decision would be delivered by email within 24 hours. There was no immediate relief, no clear victory. Just as the mediation concluded, my phone vibrated with a flurry of texts from Mark. She's up. Last dog. Then, a few agonizing minutes later, another. Oh my God, Alex. You have to see this. Followed by a shaky video call. Mark's face was ecstatic, tear-streaked. Behind him, the crowd was on its feet, a deafening roar filling the arena. Zephyr, a champion, stood panting at the finish line, her tail wagging furiously, the gold medal glinting around her neck. She had done it. She had won. The disruption had become a world champion. But even as the euphoria washed over me, the lingering uncertainty of the HOA's decision, the threat of legal action and crushing fines, remained. The celebration was bittersweet, hanging precariously between triumph and potential ruin. The championship was won, but the war for my peace, my home, and my right to train was still to be decided. The email from the mediator arrived precisely 24 hours later, a single, concise paragraph that held the fate of my home and my passion. But before I even opened it, the world had already begun to shift. News of Zephyr's victory had spread like wildfire. The National Agility Championship, a niche sport to most, had suddenly captured mainstream attention, largely due to Zephyr's record-breaking speed and the heartwarming underdog narrative of a trainer battling a petty HOA. Local news channels picked up the story, then national sports networks. Zephyr, the Lakeview Estates Lightning, became an overnight sensation. Videos of her championship runs went viral, showcasing her incredible athleticism and the undeniable bond between us. The disruption wasn't just tolerated anymore, it was celebrated. The immediate impact on the HOA was seismic. Mr. Davies, who had reveled in his self-appointed role as community guardian, found himself on the defensive. His phone, once ringing with complaints about noise, was now ringing with calls from reporters, asking about the champion dog's training conditions and the HOA's attempts to silence a national hero. The mediation decision, when I finally dared to open the email, was a stunning vindication. The mediator, citing the overwhelming public interest and the demonstrable lack of actual damage to property values. In fact, several real estate agents had started using home of a world champion as a selling point for Lakeview Estates, ruled heavily in my favor. The cease and desist order was overturned. The accumulated fines were dismissed, deemed excessive and punitive given the circumstances, while a clause was added about reasonable hours for high-decibel training. It was a minor concession. Compared to the total victory, the HOA was ordered to cover a portion of my legal fees, a bitter pill for Mr. Davies to swallow. The community's reaction was a complete turnaround. The initial murmurs of dissent at HOA meetings transformed into shouts of pride. Mrs. Henderson, who had once scowled at my agility ramp, now brought Zephyr homemade, organic dog biscuits. Mr. Davies, visibly deflated, avoided eye contact. His attempts to rally support for his property value crusade met with polite but firm resistance. Even the most ardent HOA supporters now approached me, sheepishly congratulating me on Zephyr's success. Children, who had previously only glimpsed Zephyr from behind fences, now gathered at the edge of my yard, watching her practice, their faces alight with awe. Parents, once annoyed by the noise, now saw it as the sound of inspiration. My disruption had become a source of community pride, a story they could tell their friends and family, a unique claim to fame for Lakeview Estates. The very activities they sought to suppress were now the reason their neighborhood was featured on national television. Zephyr, oblivious to the human drama, continued to thrive in the spotlight. Her victory wasn't just a trophy, it opened doors. We received invitations to perform at major sporting events, to give demonstrations at dog expos, and even to appear on morning talk shows. The financial strain that had plagued me for years eased considerably, replaced by a comfortable stability that allowed me to invest even more in Zephyr's well-being and future training. We even found a state-of-the-art indoor agility facility a few towns over, allowing us to train year-round without disturbing anyone, though the occasional outdoor session in my now famous backyard became a beloved ritual for the neighborhood kids. The story of Zephyr and me became a testament to perseverance against petty adversity, a reminder that true passion, when nurtured with dedication, can overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. It reinforced the theme that what one person perceives as a nuisance, another might recognize as the blossoming of greatness. My disruption was not about breaking rules for the sake of it, but about pushing boundaries in pursuit of a dream. It taught me that sometimes the greatest battles aren't fought in grand arenas, but in the quiet corners of your own backyard, against the small-mindedness of those who fail to see the extraordinary in the unconventional. Zephyr, my world champion, wasn't just a dog. She was the living embodiment of a dream realized, and together, we had not only won a championship, but had also, inadvertently, transformed a neighborhood, proving that true peace isn't in the absence of noise, but the harmony of shared triumph. Our future, once clouded by legal threats, now stretched out bright and limitless, filled with new challenges, new audiences, and the unwavering bond that had seen us through it all.